Hey, it's the Greg and Lisa show.
And yeah, it is. I'm Greg, and thankfully Lisa didn't bully me into doing the intro that time. So
No, not this time. So, anyways, we want to dig into this topic because, as you're aware, there was a big shooting on January 5th where a 17-year-old went in and killed one sixth grader, and five people got injured, and then he took his own life. And in reading the articles online, a lot of it had to do with bullying. He'd been bullied his whole life since elementary school, so relentlessly. And then the final straw was his sister started getting bullied. And that was
hmm
it. He was hurt. He was mad. He was, just so many emotions were, going on inside of
well,
him that,
sure, and obviously there's no excuse for murder, but
no, absolutely
and
not.
that's an extreme example. But you can imagine how this must have started, and how there were probably little signs along the way that I'm not a criminologist, I'm not a
Right,
psychologist,
right.
but I would imagine maybe there was some way this could have been prevented, but you would have had to go back and
Right.
you
And
know,
I think we have to keep our eyes and ears open,
yeah.
because bullying is more prevalent now than ever. And it's a big, serious topic. So we're going to dig into it today.
Yeah, let's do it.
And, hopefully you'll learn something. We've learned some things in our research, but we want to, spend some time talking about it.
Yeah, and especially now as kids are, obviously going back to school and January 5th, right?
Right.
Right, coming off a winter break.
Right. 2024, it's already upon
Yep.
us. And, we've already had the big incident already. So, but anyways, the definition of bullying, according to the Center for Disease Control, says bullying is any unwanted aggressive behaviors by another youth or a group of youths that are not your siblings and that are not any type of a dating partner that involves observed or perceived power imbalance, and it's repeated multiple times, and it is highly likely to be
So
repeated.
from the short, I guess technically you weren't bullying me since it says youth or group of youths. So
Yeah, that's right. I'm too old to be bullying
we'll
you.
see if I survive that comment until next week. But no, I mean, I
Yeah,
think obviously that's geared towards kids, but
right.
obviously people of any age can be bullied by people of
Certainly.
any age.
Certainly, that's true. And then there's cyberbullying, which is the willful and repeated harm that is inflicted through the use of computers, cell phones, any other electronic devices. It's hurtful social media posts, it's mean statements, it's made while gaming, where they develop hate accounts and they created to embarrass and threaten or abuse, or any similar forms of cruelty and
Yeah,
meanness
it's
online.
particularly dangerous. It may not be physical, but the emotional and psychological. It's sometimes even worse because
It
you know
is.
at least when I was going to school, we I was kind of the generation that sort of lived a little bit before the internet and a little bit after. But for the most part, we could kind of escape it when we got home, and now you
Mm,
can't always do that nowadays.
right, because all of our technology is so prevalent in the families and at home that
Yeah.
it makes it
And
hard to get away
And
from
the
it.
other dangerous thing about cyberbullying, especially for young people, is if you're escaping this, the nice person you run into out there in cyberspace may not be what they purport to be. Obviously,
Correct.
we
They
know
may
there's a
not.
lot of dangers of the internet and meeting people online. So
There
there's
is.
a lot of stuff this can lead to that's just not
Right.
good.
Right. And that's what we're going to talk about later on, how, the parents have responsibilities,
Oh, yeah.
to watch out and protect for those
Yep.
things. But, the federal government didn't start collecting data on bullying until 2005, when they thought that, it was becoming a big issue. But in 2010, there was 160,000 children that missed school every day because they were afraid of being bullied. Can you imagine what it would be now?
It would
And
be nuts.
yeah, and
Can't
as
even
that maybe
imagine.
that's part of why a lot of kids are homeschooled, or they're sent to other
Well,
schools,
yeah, sure.
So
There are real problems that do that. A lot of people,
right.
decide to homeschool and send to private schools and whatnot and open enroll their places for a lot of reasons. But yeah, I'm sure that is one of the
Mm-hmm.
reasons you might do that. Statistic from 2019, 41% of students reported being bullied and felt it was going to happen again.
Yeah. How do you think you can identify some of the signs of bullying? And bullying is also considered youth violence because
Yeah.
usually, you know, there isn't anything good going to come from bullying.
No, no. And youth violence, I mean, violence really is, expanding for me anyway,
Mm-hmm.
expanding the definition of violence to be beyond the physical, I think is a good thing. Signs of it, like as we know, like kids are growing up, like kids are usually, you're noticing a change, right? So many kids are super active, super outgoing. You notice
Mm-hmm.
one day they're just not that way and they come home and it's the one word answer.
Yeah.
Now, maybe your kid was always the one word answer kid, sort of like I
Mm-hmm.
was, and I was bullied and that was terrible because I didn't expound on things. So there is
Mm-hmm.
personal responsibility, but I think it's a change in emotion. I mean, that's
I would think there's mood swings.
moods. Yeah,
Yeah, and
definitely.
a lot of
Yeah.
times they are more quiet or they don't
Yeah,
want to,
the quiet.
dig into
And there are
the
triggers,
right.
something that normally happens at home that might have been okay is now suddenly don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be involved in that or just kind of
Right.
fly off the
Kind of
handle a little
separate
bit.
yourself from the
Yeah.
family or, because something's going on as a parent and or a grandparent and you just can't identify it and you just kind of watch and you start,
Yeah.
kind of, doing your own detective work or trying to
Yeah. You,
figure it
you really
out.
do have to pay attention because
Hmm.
sometimes they're not going to tell you.
Right. They're not. They're not. So, but it's important, I think, that even before we even think that there's any bullying going on, that we have a discussion with our kids and talk about bullying.
Absolutely.
Because that way, if you open that door of communication and you start working with them on it ahead of time,
Right.
then it will
Right.
kind of give them some tools and they'll have their radar out
Sure.
to,
And
say,
you can't know what you don't know. So maybe
correct.
you're a young kid and
Hmm.
you don't know that that's not how things are supposed to be.
Right.
That you start to think that's normal.
Hmm.
It seems wrong, but you don't have that knowledge base to know what that is and what's happening, and
Yeah.
you don't take care of it, and all of a sudden it does sort of become normal.
Right.
Yeah,
And yeah, and then you also think, in the reality is, sometimes if one kid is bullied, they bully back
sure.
because they think if you're going to do that to me, I'm going to do that to you. And so a lot of times, and you're going to see in the statistics that the person that is bullied has also become a bully, you
Yeah,
know.
and that's a
And so
yep.
that's one of the reasons too, I think, that we have to have open discussions with the kids
Yeah,
and
and we'll get into some of these statistics. Like
mm-hmm,
you can see where that leads to it because I don't want to get into it too early, but so if you're a kid and you're getting bullied and you're doing a little bit of it back, and all of a sudden you're the one starting to get in trouble and stuff, that is
mm-hmm,
a very hard thing emotionally for a kid to deal with. Is you
mm-hmm.
know you can't express or necessarily prove that you were just defending yourself, or even if you were, you might have gone too far. And
Right. But you got in trouble, and the person that really bullied you originally
yeah,
didn't.
in your mind, you
Mm-hmm.
didn't start the thing. Like you were just
Right.
trying to protect yourself.
Right. So, but in high school, 1 out of 5 kids are bullied, and 1 out of 6 are bullied online. And the high school statistics are different than the tween statistics. The tween statistics, which are ages 9 through
Sure.
12, 1 out of 4 of them are bullied. But how can you really prevent bullying? If you're having that conversation with your kids, how can you really prevent the bullying while increasing your child's radar about bullying?
This is a tough one because as a parent, you can't control somebody else's
You can't,
kid.
but when my kids were growing up, because I had some background in law enforcement, we at that time had a code word. And so we developed a code word that, meant I was in trouble. And so if you were talking to them and they used that word in a sentence, then you knew something was up.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
that's a great idea.
And so
Sure.
that's one of the things, because I was thinking about that, and preparing for this is you can have, 4 code words that mean 4 different things, or you can have one code word that, could just signal bullying, because then that way, if a child comes home from school and they have been bullied, they can tell you that word and immediately. And they don't have to actually go into it right
Go through
then.
the whole story, and then at
Right.
least you have a basis from which to investigate or
Right.
call the school or,
Or give them time just to process and then come and talk to you.
Sure.
But also, we talk about strengthening our youth skills, trying to, in my day, it was thickening the skin.
Sure.
And they use that saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Yeah.
But, and in actuality, that was supposed to toughen you and make you think that they didn't hurt you, but we all know words hurt.
Yeah, and it is tough. I mean, and some people may, respond to that. Okay, there are certainly people out there you can say, hey, sticks and stones may break my bones, and they can kind of have that in their head, and it works for them. A lot of kids who have been through a lot of things,
they can't.
My children or grandchildren,
right.
They, that sometimes our brains are just wired differently, and I might, in this case, might say I can't do that when in a lot of situations I probably can, but there are people who legitimately cannot do that.
Right. But you can also create a community, a safety community that's going to be protective of the kids. So you can develop that. These are the people that are safe to talk to, safe to be around, and that you can talk to about things or bullying, because sometimes kids will talk to one adult and they won't talk to another adult, and so that's one of the things too. But the amount of time on the device too is also going to be an indicator, because usually if they're on the device a whole lot, that means things are okay. But if they're on it less and less, sometimes that means that there's an issue.
Sure.
Especially if they are choosing.
Well, I was going to say very few kids nowadays, right or wrong, very few are going to put that down, on their own.
Right.
And they might. And I don't think we want to say, oh, it's definitely that. But it's a sign.
Right.
It's something to look for.
Right. Yeah. Right. So those are some of the things that, we need to kind of pay attention to. The statistics and some of the information that we have picked up today was from the National Center of Education Statistics from 2019. There was a information from Justin W. Patchen, PhD, and Sansar Hinja, PhD, did a cyberbullying research in partnership with the Cartoon Network, which the Cartoon Network actually did a research and survey in 2017. So that's part of the reason why they partnered up in 2020.
Sure, absolutely.
And then also stopbullying.gov. There's lots of places to go.
There are lots of programs nowadays, and nothing's perfect, but there are resources out there.
Right.
Resources, organizations. A lot of organizations for young people travel around the country doing conferences for this sort of thing and talk about bullying, which is good.
Right, it is. So, what do you think some of the effects of bullying are?
Obviously it's no secret we have an outline here, and I've been looking at this. I'm like, well, yeah, some of this is, explains a lot. So depression, anxiety, start off, sleep difficulties, lower academic achievements, dropping out of school. That would be a big red flag if a child who's really doing very well just wants to stop.
Right. And a lot of times, that peer pressure ties into bullying as well, and even in competitions. If there's a competitive event or something going on, there's somebody that's going to play the head game to try and knock you off your game just so that they can win. And I think as a student or a kid or even an adult, because it happens in the adult world when it comes to promotions,
Absolutely.
that we have to keep everything in the forefront of our mind. That sometimes the things that happen aren't personal, even though they feel personal to us. It's about the game. And sometimes we have to get our mindset, where it's going to be beneficial to us.
Right.
But students who are bullied and then also bully others are at greater risk for mental health and behavior problems.
Right.
And, versus if one was just bullied, then they're less likely to have those problems. Or if one was just a bully, having one thing happen to them
Right.
versus being bullied and being a bully, it
And
gives you a
that's
higher
not to
risk.
say if your kid is just bullying
Yeah.
is the bully, and you know that you don't
Right.
need to watch out for
Right.
any
No. No.
mental stuff going
Right.
forward. But
Right.
some other things that students reported, bullying and its negative impact. 69%, 69.1%. I'm sorry, said they had a negative impact on how they felt about themselves. 31.9% said it had a negative impact on friendships. 13.1% negative impact on physical health. 6.5% negative impact on schoolwork. And even when you get down to percents that sound low, sometimes when we put things in percents and we say 13 or 6 and it's not a big number, we think, oh, that's not much. But you're talking,
Mm-hmm.
you know, America has 300 million people in it.
Yeah.
Fair portion of them are students, so you're
Right.
talking numbers in the millions here.
You are, and when you look at the 69.1% that has a negative impact on how you feel about yourself, you know, that leads to a lot of things.
Yeah, it leads to things that it leads to some of the
Mm-hmm.
other things I just read off,
Right.
but it leads to
Right.
plenty of other things too.
Right. So, and in the bullying process, a lot of the bullies reported, of course, that they were made fun of, they were called names, or they were insulted, they were subject to rumors, they were pushed, tripped, shoved, or spit on, and they were excluded from activities on purpose. It goes back to like in the gym days when you were the last one to get picked to be on the dodgeball team,
Sure.
because they didn't think that you were fast enough or you didn't look right or
And it's like it's dodgeball in gym class. Like, we're not.
yeah, when you sit back and look at it, it's not
Yeah.
that important, but at
No,
that
yeah, no,
time
for
and
the kids.
age,
Yeah, I'm
it
speaking more
is.
from like you're sitting there and you're
Yeah.
bullying, like you're always going to on purpose not pick a kid. Like
Right. Yeah.
you're throwing a ball and you're running around a small space.
Right.
This is not, you don't need.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that all plays into the psychological aspect and the mental part of, kids growing up. And, there's always been bullies from the day, from even when you look in the movies where they're stealing your lunch because they didn't have one. I always try to tell, my grandson was talking to me about being bullied, and I tried to explain to him that we don't know what that bully is living with on a daily basis.
Yes.
He could be
Absolutely.
being bullied at home or abused at home or
Yeah.
neglected at
And in many
home.
cases, severe instances of those
Yes,
things.
that's true. But, and maybe he has no food at his house and he wants to eat, and that's the only thing he knows to do. And so I try to tell him, we have to look beyond sometimes just the actions of people, and see why, what is a reason that people bully. We have to look at everything as a whole. But bullies reported where incidents occurred.
And I'm looking at this list, and we could read off all the statistics, but this is basically everywhere in the school and everywhere outside of the school too.
Yeah, with the biggest portion of the occurrences being in the hallway and stairwells at school and inside the classroom.
I was going to say inside the classroom is right there, which is
yeah.
That's too bad.
See, I wouldn't think about it being inside the classroom because the teacher's there. But one of the scenarios that I read online was they were in the classroom and somebody passed a note over to this girl and she read it and she started crying and she actually just got up out of the class and went to the counselor. And the guy that was reporting it said she came back at lunch, she wasn't crying as much, but things still weren't right with her. So I don't think about passing a note to be a bully. You usually think a lot of times, but it is possible.
It was kind of passing a physical note was kind of like the precursor to texting, and
yeah.
So,
but you figure hallways and stairwells never had cameras either.
No, and a lot of it does happen there. I mean, I can personally probably make a case for all of these places. Those things do happen.
But out of the bullying at school, 64.6% have witnessed school bullying.
Yeah, and a little over half, 50.2%, have been bullied at school themselves.
And 13.7% bullied others at school.
And 71.1%, somewhere like any of the.
Any of them, yeah.
So pretty much everybody's has
Yeah,
some connection to bullying.
right, right. But tweens, they are for the most part helpers, and
Right.
those are the 9 to 12 year olds.
Because as a, as you can help if you see something.
Right, you
So
can, and I think that's part of the conversation that we need to have with our
yeah,
kids. That when we start talking to them about it, what, if you see somebody being bullied, you step in and help out, or you go get a teacher. Depending on the situation, you
yeah.
get a police
And
officer.
yeah, you have to
You
judge because
right,
obviously getting involved in something physical can be dangerous. And that's, you don't,
right,
I'm not saying that person doesn't need help, but you
right,
also getting hurt does not does
right,
not do anybody any good in that kind of
right.
scenario.
But we have to, a lot of times, we have to learn muscle memory on what to do.
Sure.
It's kind of like when they do the fire drills at school and they do the hurricane drills and the tornado drills, and now they have active shooter drills. And so, in my mind, we need to practice, de escalating bullying. Even in the school, the schools could teach this as well, because most of the time they think the bullying is a disciplinary action. It's a discipline issue, and so you have to tell somebody for it to be a disciplinary issue. But you also have to look at teaching, self talk, instead of letting the negativity and the self image that happens from bullying, that we think so much less of ourselves or the way we look or the way we are. We have to teach our kids doing self talk, because we want to keep them from doing self harm. And I used that scenario the other day too with my grandson, because we were talking about things, and I said, you know, bullying makes you feel bad. Well, we talked about Fred in the head, and I said,
Mm-hmm.
think about Fred. I said, if you're feeling bad, tell Fred, get out of my head. you know so even with the bullying, that's, bullying is from the enemy as well. People they're evil, they're not Christ
Right.
followers, and their goal is to tear you down, beat you up, do whatever they can to make your life miserable.
And that still
Hmm.
tracks with where we're saying these bullies may
Right,
may have Fred in their own head
that is
from home and
correct,
everything
from,
else
yeah,
as well.
right,
So
from what's happening. But we have a choice, to make a decision on how we feel,
yep.
and we also have to practice that, and we also have to instill that in our kids. Um, but as far as, the tweens being helpers, 69.9% have tried to help someone that is being bullied at
Right.
school.
And then 66.3% tried to help someone being cyberbullied.
Right. And so I think if you look at it, there's a difference, between the tweens and the teens. You have your middle school and you have your high
Mm-hmm.
school. Your high schoolers are a little more mature and they think they're going to handle things on their own. They are less likely sometimes to step in. But your tweens, because they're still in that growing stage and that helping stage,
Yep.
they do want to try to help. So they do have some internal instincts, and maybe they have been, taught these things at home, which is a good reminder. Is they block the person from bullying them,
Right.
and so there's different ways to block besides putting your hands up. You could just walk away.
Mm-hmm.
There's,
And obviously, in
so.
the context of cyberbullying,
Mm-hmm,
blocking is definitely
mm-hmm,
something that can be done.
right. And 50% told a parent. 42.8% ignored the bullying, which basically they walked away.
Yep.
And then, 29.8% reported to the website or the app that there was a cyberbullying issue.
Or in 29.6% just took a break from the device.
Right, right.
All that's going on out there.
It is. But you know what? As they get older and they become teens, like my two teenage granddaughters, well, one will be a teen in
Sure. Yep.
February, you can't pry the phones out of their hands. And, but there are reasons and roadblocks on why some people don't want to report the bullying.
Yeah. You might be afraid of making it worse. You might not know what to say or do, or in the context of online, you might not know how to report it or where to report it because
Right.
people can make fake accounts, and that those attacks come from so many different directions. It can be difficult.
That's right. And sometimes they're afraid because they're afraid other kids will make fun of them, Or
you'd be afraid that reporting that would
right,
lead to even more.
right.
You knock one down and two more pop up.
Hmm. Or they're afraid of getting hurt because maybe they've been
Sure,
threatened online or their loved ones have
absolutely.
been threatened online, and so they don't want to do anything. I mean, how many movies have we seen and experiences that show the kids don't want to say anything because the perpetrator is threatened
Yeah,
to really
no, it
hurt their
happens. It
family.
happens a lot.
It does, yeah. And also not knowing who to tell. And so I think that's where we go back to, if we open that conversation with the kids, that
Yep.
we can lay out those guidelines for them so that they can start thinking and putting two and two together. So, but the issue today, which is so commonplace, which we talked about devices and too much time on our phones in one of our previous
Yeah.
shows, but 90% of tweens,
That's 9 out of 10 kids.
yes, 9 out of 10, have devices of their own, and they have used one or more of the most popular social media apps or indoor games.
Which is
It's insane.
it is insane. Well, also you consider that a lot of these places do have a minimum age of 16, but sure, everybody's just putting that in.
Well, here's the thing
Honestly.
now. We are in Ohio,
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and
we are.
our state of Ohio is getting sued because we are trying to hold various technologies, apps, games, whoever you want to say,
Sure.
TikTok, Facebook,
Yep. Yep.
X or whatever, responsible by letting the parents say it's okay for which apps they get on. Now that should be a parent's responsibility. Now these companies are saying that it goes against the Constitution. Now, my feeling is, if your apps aren't designed to be addictive to kids, it wouldn't matter whether this initiative and this law stayed in place, would it? And that would put
No.
the responsibility on the parents instead of Facebook, and
Right.
instead of
Right.
TikTok, and instead of X. You know, it's like it has to be a point where, as parents, we step to the plate and we say, "Hey, this is our choice." The parents have to step to the plate and be responsible.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be, you know, the millionaires and billionaires of all these companies that have to sue because they're afraid they may
Yeah.
not get a
Yeah.
13-year-old.
It's tough, and it takes an effort from everybody because
Mhm.
you cannot let your kids get on these things. But
Yes,
if everybody else is doing it, they're going to hear about it at school.
they
This
are.
grandson you've spoken
Right.
on has come
Yeah.
home and told me about things he's seen. I'm like, okay, that's. But how did you? Because
Right.
we don't let you on. So
Right. Because the other kids, these
yeah,
other
absolutely.
9-year-olds on the playgrounds with their smartphones are
But
showing.
21% of 9-year-olds have a smartphone. By the way,
That's crazy because 68% of the
when you're
12-year-olds,
12.
have a smartphone. But and I do understand that there is a reason for a phone because everybody used to have landlines back in the day. So we had a
Absolutely.
landline that our friends could call on. We could use a phone to call out. But there we go back to the flip phones. You
Sure.
don't have to have the internet on every phone. All you need
can,
it for is safety.
You can still get
Correct.
phones that are
Right.
just
Right.
phones.
Right. So, again, it goes back to, when are the parents going to, take their roles back and be parents? Because a lot of this stuff that we talk about, it comes back to us. It comes back to our parenting decisions and why we allow our kids to do the things that we do. And, but the statistics of these apps and games and the sites that these tweens are on, when again, these are 9 to 12-year-olds, 66.9% of them are on YouTube.
Okay, so this is percentage of that group that
Right.
is on the platform.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Right. 47.9% have been on Minecraft. 46.7% have been on Roblox. 44.5% have been on Google Classroom.
Which is kind of a fact of life now, but
yes, it is because of school requirements. But again,
getting on there afterwards, and
there
are messaging in some
Mhm.
cases, and the way the school regulates that can vary from school
Right.
to school.
But I don't understand then why they just don't get shut down. Because when you are giving a child from kindergarten up a tablet or a Chromebook,
Right.
and you are giving them keys to the kingdom to get on the internet, you're just as much to blame as their curiosity is to see what's out there, because
Yeah.
you're not policing the product enough.
Yeah. There are
You
things
know?
that are put in place, but kids are smarter than those,
Yeah.
often smarter than those things. And
Yeah.
those filters are, filters are great, and
Mhm.
these things they put on firewalls, but they're not perfect. Like,
Yeah.
things slip through.
Well, that's why you turn them off.
Yeah.
You know, that's why you turn them off.
Yeah.
You know, but 31.2% have been on Fortnite, 29.8% have been on TikTok, 26% have been on YouTube for kids.
And YouTube Kids is, a notorious one for things kind of slipping through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
things do get reported and taken down, but often, the damage has already been done by the time
Right.
some video may have been out there and accessible to kids.
Right. And then we have 15.9% on Snapchat. And anything below that, they've been on Facebook Messenger for Kids, Instagram, Discord, Facebook, Twitch, and only 5.3% have been on none of those apps. So that should tell you right there, we're basically 95% of all the smartphone users.
Yeah, I would submit that even in that 5.3%, there are probably apps that aren't on this list that aren't necessarily as popular. But
right. Oh,
there
yeah.
are definitely, it's probably a little
Yeah.
higher than 95% even.
Yeah, I would agree. But we talked about parents having the responsibility.
Sure.
So, what are some of the things parents really need to seriously look at?
Establish phone monitoring guidelines, aka tell your child that they're only allowed to do X, Y, and Z on there, and then make sure that they are only doing X, Y, and Z. And if they are doing things other than X, Y, and Z, take that thing away, or
that's exactly right.
Turn it off, or
right. And you're not going to know that they're doing that if you don't do an audit of their phone,
right,
and you don't check it.
Right.
And that whole scenario about it's my phone and you can't take it. It's like, excuse me, you're not paying the bill.
Well, right,
and you are the parent.
And auditing it, apps and stuff set up to do that are great, but get the phone and look at
right.
it.
You have to look at it.
Yep.
Because your kids aren't going to tell you, because if they're doing something they don't want you to do, they don't want you looking
they're
at it.
going to figure around the way the thing that you put on there to report the stuff.
Right. But it's accountability for them too. And in order to teach them responsibility, and when you give them a phone, the first thing you should do is set that up. And you're going to say, we pay for this phone. We are allowing you to have it. It is a privilege. It's not an expected thing. It's not that you earned it or deserved it. We are giving it to you for safety reasons.
Right.
Now, we are going to take your phone so many times during the month, and we are going to check it. That is part of you having a phone. And you tell them that right up front. That's part of establishing the phone monitoring guidelines. So, and if they want to lose the phone because they abuse the privilege, just like you said, you're going to take it.
There's a lot of things you can do with that. One, the kids are going to figure out how to clear the history of this stuff on their phone. So if you pick up a child's phone and there's literally nothing on there, they got rid of more than likely something has happened.
Right.
Another thing I just kind of thought of, if phones can be just a phone, maybe you start off with the basic phone, and then if they prove themselves to be trustworthy with that, because you can still text with just numbers. So,
you can text.
So there are things you can still do. So, it's kind of the biblical principle of if you're responsible with a little, then you get to have a
little more. Yeah. Right. But also, when you're going to audit the phone, you're going to do it surprises.
Right.
Yeah, you're not going to have that chance.
No, this is a random thing. So most children aren't going to be diligent enough to always have it all off on a random test.
Right.
And I'm not trying to say you just are suspicious of your kids, but you should probably be suspicious of
Well, you have to be suspicious of the kids, but you have to be suspicious of everybody out there online.
Yeah.
Because not everybody out there online is legitimate. And, you're not going to know what's happening if you don't look at their phone. And, girls and everybody are all about selfies these days. and they send a picture of their selfies and they think it's to, one friend, but it's not. It's to somebody who is a perpetrator.
Right,
And
right.
so, if you don't check your phones, you don't really know what your kids are doing. And that is part of a relationship building, but it is part of raising your kids and protecting your kids. Because, how many kids, and it didn't take phones sometimes for kids to be snatched out of their bedroom windows. But nowadays they set up a meet place and that's where they go. And,
Yeah,
they're telling you they're going to go spend the night at somebody's house. Well, they're not. They're at somebody else's house or they're meeting somebody else. And if you don't keep track, I don't want to be, that parent or grandparent, that gets a phone call that says my child is
right.
missing. I
Yeah.
mean, because you have such a short window to pray and to get your child back alive. And
Right.
there's
It's
it's you can't express the severity of enough, and we always
yeah.
think that it's never going to happen to us, and we have to get out of that
Well,
mentality.
yeah, because we have these statistics. It happened to somebody, and
Right,
it probably, of those,
right.
some of those statistics, 69% here, 68% there, about 100% of those people didn't think it would happen to them.
That's right. That's right. And they thought they had everything under control, you know. So, and so even on the bullying part, we don't know that somebody is not bullying them to do something that they don't want to do, that is illegal, that is, could, really put themselves in harm's way. But you do need the open communications
Yeah.
and you need to talk
Yes.
about solutions on who to notify and how will you manage something, if bullying has happened and what to do. Because a lot of times the kids don't want to tell their parents because they're afraid their parents are going to fly off the handle. They're going to run to the school and have an appointment with the principal and the counselor, or they're going to go to that bully's home and confront their parents, and so they're afraid that we're going to make matters worse.
Yeah.
And I have to tell
Yeah.
you, that's probably a very legitimate complaint because
Oh,
I
sure.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's when my long fingernails would come
Oh,
out
yeah.
and
No,
say,
it comes from a good place, but
it does.
sometimes it does do more harm than good. Now, sometimes
Right.
sometimes those things are necessary anyway. Sometimes the
Mm-hmm.
thing that has happened is so severe that
Right.
it
Yeah.
warrants that.
Right.
But
Right.
you'd like to think it was that severe, the school would be involved and there'd be other measures happening as well.
You would like to, but with the online bullying, when you look at they're playing these games with people in other parts of the country and they're being bullied, and different things are happening and they're being, made to feel less than. And, yeah, how hard is it for you to stop a game when you're angry or mad at a player? You want to go after it and get them more,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah.
And so, we really have to look at it. And that's why, the open communications and talking about bullying and what is considered bullying and even role playing bullying. And then talking about solutions and resolutions on, how everybody can handle it and how you can have a peaceable solution. So, but we have to talk to the kids and we have to build a relationship with our kids, just like we talked about before.
Sure.
It's a commitment. You have to build it, earn it. And we also have to remember that bullying is not just limited to kids. It's at the water cooler. It's at,
Well,
there's always
yeah, because
cliques and
well, statistics weren't collected until 2005, so
mm-hmm,
there are a lot of people my age, a little bit younger out there
mm-hmm,
who you know, didn't deal with this stuff and still don't know how
yeah,
to deal with this stuff properly.
yeah. I was bullied more by my brothers than I really was bullied in school, but basically because I already knew my values and I really didn't care about being involved in a lot of things at school because I worked a lot.
Sure.
And, but I also remember to this day, I remember the age I had a autograph book and I would have people autograph it or write me
Oh, yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah.
Well, one of my brothers wrote 2-ton Leisa
Oh.
in my autograph book.
Oh. Oh.
And, that has stayed with me all these years,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's like, when we think about that, those are the words that hurt and those are the words that stay with us.
No,
And
those things
that's why,
stick. Yeah.
yeah, we
Absolutely
have
stick.
to always, tell ourselves we're worth more than that, 2-ton Leisa sign, in my autograph book. But it's like, those are things that, stay with us and they have a mental impact on us.
Absolutely, they
Yeah.
do.
So, and we talked about, a little bit about how we have to also pray and think about the bullies,
Right, because like you said, maybe
because,
being abused at home,
right.
mimicking, you
Mm-hmm.
are a product in a lot of ways of your environment, and if
You
your
are.
environment is abusive and violent, then
You're
you are probably going to be some degree of
abusive and
abusive and
violent.
violent.
Yep, unless you make the choice not to be that way.
Right.
Somebody made a comment to me the other day, and I thought this was good because it said, if you didn't like the way you were raised, then do raise yours better. And so when you think about that, because as kids, we don't always have control over our environments
Sure.
because we have parents or adults who are responsible for us. But, we do have the ability to make the choice in how we raise our kids. And, one of the things that, I tried to do different was, my mom and dad weren't big on affection. And, like I was 30 some years old before my dad ever said he loved me. And I had decided that, I was always going to tell my kids that I loved them when I was on the
Sure.
phone. And, you know,
And that takes an effort, right?
mm-hmm.
Because you didn't grow up being used to that. So
Right.
you really have to think and try. And I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
eventually it becomes
A habit.
habit and
Right.
natural.
Right. But so, so it is true. So just because we were raised, maybe not the way we would have liked, it doesn't mean that we don't have a choice to make life better for
Now,
ourselves.
you have to have some grace on yourself too. So
Mm-hmm.
no one's the perfect parent, right?
Correct. Yep.
You are gonna screw something up.
You are.
I think it's our pastor at a church has said multiple times he would rather pay for his kids' therapy than their college. He is
Yeah.
paying for their college.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, anyway, that is happening. But it
Yeah.
just goes to show
Yeah.
you, it's
Yeah.
something is going to happen. But
Right.
if you're
Right.
somebody who's out there trying and you're watching something like this, or it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily have to be us, but if you're taking advantage of resources and trying to take in information and trying to
Right.
learn and trying to do better,
Right.
you're ahead of the curve, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's about, trying and improving. And, the best tools that we do have available to us are Bible verses.
Whoa, we have Bible verses for this topic too.
Yes,
Wow.
we do. And
One
so,
day I'm going to suggest a topic, and you're
see
not
if I
going
can find one.
to. Spoiler of that story. There always is.
Yeah. Yeah. But, as adults, we know these tools are better. And
Yes.
we know the Bible tells us that your tongue is like a two-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
And so we know how much damage that, our mouths and speaking can do. So there are verses and tools that we can remember, and we have to have that relationship with Jesus Christ. But we teach our kids so they can have their own relationship with Jesus Christ. And then that way they have tools that, they can use and they can share with others too. And so the first one that always came to mind to me when we talked about this topic was the golden rule, which is to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You're supposed to treat
Mm-hmm.
people the way that you want to be
Right.
treated. And so, Matthew 7:12 tells us that. And so sometimes we have to take a punch on the shoulder or a push, but we are in turn always supposed to love everybody. As hard as that is, we are supposed to love everybody. So Second Timothy says, for what the Spirit of God gave us is not timid. He gave us the power and for love and self-discipline. So, he's given us the ability to, have the power to love. And we're supposed to love our enemies. In Luke 6:27, love your enemies and do good to those who hate you.
Yeah.
Bless those who
Yep.
curse you, and pray for those who mistreat you.
And that's some of the toughest stuff to do, and the Bible says it. Luke says it, straight out there.
Right.
The Bible says that in a number of places, very directly. Sometimes
Right.
not quite as direct.
Right, but if you thought about it, and you were in the middle of a fight, and you just stopped and started praying for that person that you were arguing with or was bullying you, what do you think would happen?
It's probably going to stop. I mean, I would venture to say that it's probably not. It's not going to get any worse.
No,
Your situation's not going to be made any worse anyway. Now there are people who are going to persist, but
yeah, but you have to look at it, God's also going to take care of you.
Well, right.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never, that's a really good idea. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you are a bully and somebody just prays in the middle, like,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be, even if you don't agree with it or understand it, that's got to be just such a shock to the system that you don't even
Yeah, though you
necessarily know what to do with it.
right, they would be taken by surprise. And so, but those are things that, the Bible gives us these tools to use, but we won't use them if we don't practice them and ingrain them, in our
Yeah,
brains.
because
And
these things aren't easy. You're
no,
talking about
no.
stopping it. Like the first time you try a tool and it doesn't stop the thing, if you're a young kid and
Mm-hmm.
you don't have the support,
Yeah.
you might give up on that thing.
You have to keep trying it, but a lot of
Yeah.
times too, if we don't practice it, we won't remember it
Well,
either.
it's persistent because
Mm-hmm.
it's often for me, my experience, it's not enough to tell somebody one time that you don't care what they're saying. It's
Mm-hmm.
sometimes not enough to walk away once. You have to develop a
Right.
pattern.
Right.
So next one here, Romans chapter 12 verses 20 and 21. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed them. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
Right. And basically, I think, that burning, heap burning coals on his head is like, it shocks them. They don't really
Yeah,
understand. I had
yeah,
a lady at my work who really just had a disdain for me, and I really didn't know why. I never did anything. And one day I just thought, okay, I invited her to lunch, not knowing what, was going to happen. And after we went to lunch, it was like a big difference. Everything, the whole relationship just changed. It was like I didn't do
yeah.
anything, but we
So
spent
yeah,
the time together
yep,
and we had lunch, and that was it. So that to me was overcoming evil with good,
right.
you
And
know.
when we read language like heap burning coals, like it is
Mm-hmm.
harsh, but it's not to say you don't love somebody or something like that. It's just
It's a shock. I mean, it
it's
is a
meant. It's
shock.
more of a shock.
Right,
It's not a
right,
you're going to give up on that
correct,
person or you're
right.
gonna you're doing something destructive. You're not trying to.
Well, that's that saying, kill them with kindness.
Yeah, you're
Yeah, that's what we,
destroying the behavior
right.
perhaps, but you're not ultimately trying to harm the person.
Oh, right. No, you're
Yep.
killing them with kindness, and
Yep.
you're going to show them that there is another way to live, and it doesn't necessarily have to be
Right.
mean and evil and bad. So,
So next one is from one of the most entertaining books in the Bible, Leviticus, uh, chapter 19, verse 18. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against someone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Like, I picture the Lord dropping the microphone when those ones then I am the Lord. Like,
yeah, yeah,
here's the thing you should do. By the way, I'm the
yeah,
Lord. I said it.
yeah, yeah.
But it's not literally what it's like, but that tells you that is
Mm-hmm.
very important.
Right. Well, that and loving our neighbors and loving everybody is of a utmost importance to God, and that's what we're supposed to do. And Ephesians 4:29 says, "Do not let any unwholeness talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building up others according to their needs, that it'll benefit those who may listen." So, we have to think about that, even though we may be in the midst of a struggle or a
Sure,
conversation or
sure,
being bullied. It's one of those things that people are watching us, especially as Christ followers, to see how we're going to react to the situation.
right,
And we try to
yeah,
do our best. And are there going to be times that we're going to fail? Yes. And then we have to ask for forgiveness. But we try to do our best because, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And I always remember that because no matter what happens to us, and that's why we're not supposed to take revenge, is God will take care of it. God kind of goes back to that, what goes around comes
yeah,
around. Well,
yep,
what goes around for us, God's going to make whatever come around, and make the whole
right.
situation right.
And
So
just to touch on this real quick, so according to their needs, and we talk about loving, it's never to say you're never going to have to say something harsh to somebody.
as long as you say it in love,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
You don't want to be insulting and you don't want to start
right.
doing the same level, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you do, stop it. I don't, you have to be
Yeah,
strong about your
firm,
words at
yeah,
times. So according to their needs, and if that person needs to hear you say, just stop that thing.
yeah. Well, so
Yep.
Deuteronomy 31:6. So to be strong and courageous, do not be afraid and do not panic before them, For the Lord your God will personally go ahead of you, and he will never fail or abandon you. So, God is always 3 steps ahead of us. He already knows what's going to happen, and he's always going to be
Oh,
there for
knows what's
us.
going to happen, knows what did happen,
Yep.
knows what's happening, all
Yep.
the
Yep.
whole all time there.
Right.
So
That's right.
so our next one here is from Psalms, chapter 34, verse 14. Turn from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it. Goes right along with a lot of the other ones we were talking about.
Right.
Psalm, again, chapter 18, verse 3. I call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. Now,
Right.
and that is good and it is true. It's just sometimes being saved from our enemies doesn't always look like what we want it to
Right.
look like.
Right. But also Psalms 82:4, where it says, rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked. Now that's where, you want to step in and save somebody from a bully, or you want to help somebody that,
Yeah.
is going through a
And
situation.
once again, that's not an instruction to go get hurt
No,
physically.
no.
But there
No.
are there are there are lots of ways to go about executing that verse depending on
Right.
the
Right.
situation.
So
Mark chapter 12 verse 31. It's a little bit of a paraphrase, but obviously it's you're going to hear it. It's going to be the meaning is still there. Love your neighbor as yourself. There are no commandments there are no greater commandments than these. And right before that, Jesus is saying, love your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So, and then right after that, love your neighbor as yourself. By the way, this one is second, but it's really it's pretty much just like that other one over there.
Right. But Proverbs 22:10 says, drive out the scoffer, strife will go out, and quarreling and abuse will cease. And so, in this instance, the scoffer would be the bully, and driving them out, getting them out of the way will, end the quarreling and the abuse, will stop. And that's one of the things that, we have to remember that we have the power of Jesus Christ with us, and we have to be able to, use that power. And, sometimes we might have to take a punch to help somebody. But if it's a matter of life and death, and you're going to save that life, and you're going to make that choice, and you're going to pray, and you're going to ask God for guidance. But we are supposed to help our neighbors, and in today's society, we don't neighbor like we used to. No. Because you don't know your neighbors, and things aren't safe, and everybody's paranoid, and everybody's we have to be so much extra safe. And I remember we used to go out and play kick the can at night and hide and go seek, a bunch of the neighborhood kids. And and today the kids don't do that. And part of it is, even though we are safety conscious, maybe we as adults need to go out and play hide and go seek and kick the can with the kids, so the kids can have some normalcy and to be able to do things. But we don't.
No, some of the issues probably do result from lack of socialization that comes from lack of kick the can, perhaps.
Right. So
Proverbs 15 verse 1, a soft answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stirs up anger.
That's right. So think about that. If somebody was hitting me and I said, you know what, I really like the sweater you have on today.
It's another one of those things where
it's another it's out of the pocket.
It's so shocking. And as a young kid, I might have thought, well, that person's going to think I'm weird. Well, that person's already hitting me, and as a kid, you don't always have the ability to analyze that kind of situation. But
it does come down to muscle memory and practicing and instilling things in our kids that they can draw from. A lot of times, kids go through so much today that we didn't have to deal with because of social media and technology, that we have to, instead of them being ahead of us, we have to be ahead of it. And we have to do the necessary steps that it takes to, give our kids the tools that they need to survive in this world. And the Bible says in Revelations the world's going to get worse and darker and more violent, and there's lots of things coming. And if we don't start preparing our kids for what's coming, and preparing our families and teaching them, we're just going to be in a world of more hurt.
Right. So
So,
as we were up here, we read off a lot of verses. There's some more you can look at. Psalm chapter 34, verses 12 through 18. Isaiah chapter 41, verses 11 through 13. Matthew chapter 55, verses 44 through 35. And then Romans chapter 12, verses 18 and 19. And look it up too. I'm sure.
yeah, we want you to look up some
Yeah,
of the verses
I'm sure
because
there. I mean, I know there are plenty of
yeah,
others.
there are a lot, but we want you to get that Bible in your hand, or we want you to pull your phone up and pull up
Right.
Psalms 34 and read 12 through 18, or Isaiah, pull up Isaiah 41 and read 11 through 13. If you're going to have your phone in hand, it's time to start learning some other practical skills that's going to be life lessons and help you learn, because the Bible cannot be any more explicit on how we should live and raise our kids.
Correct. Absolutely.
So look at, pull up Matthew 44 to 45 and read those two verses. Pull up Romans 12 and read verses 18 and 19.
Pull the thing up and read it, because the things that we think might not be applicable might be applicable.
Right.
You might disagree with some of these and their applicability to your situation, but you start reading, you're gonna find
Right, and
you're gonna
God's going
find
to
that.
speak to you in your own way.
Yep.
And that's why it's the living word. What something means to me may have a total, like Greg said, a
Yeah,
different
and
impact on what you're
it's not
going through in
radically
your
different.
life.
I'm not
You know?
suggesting that the text
Yeah.
means different things at
No.
different times, but
No, but the Bible speaks
it's
to
a living
us.
document. He
Right.
speaks to us differently.
It speaks to
at
us
different
where
times.
we are.
Yep.
And we're all in different phases and portions of our life.
Yep.
So, but we're going to wrap up with a word of prayer. Because we know bullying is a tough subject, and we also know it happens all the time, and it hurts, and
Yes.
we need to be responsible parents as well as responsible on social media as we teach our kids, but also at school. We need to teach our kids, how to, de-escalate a bully and how to survive in the world that we are currently living in. Our precious Heavenly Father, Lord, I just want to thank you for this time that we have to share together. We know that there's so much going on in the world and the families, Lord, that our families are always under attack. And Lord, there's so many single families and single income families and lots of missing dads and lots of incarcerated parents. And there are just so many trials and tribulations that we go through in this world. But Lord, we know that you're with us every step of the way. We put our faith in you, Lord, and we just pray that you'll be with these people no matter what they're going through. They're our YouTube family, and we all experience so many different things in our lives, and sometimes we think we're the only ones going through it. But Lord, we're not. You're the Almighty God, and we're not going to keep you in a box, and we're going to let you be God and do what your will is and what you would have us to do. Give everybody a blessed rest of their week. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Now, are you going to end the show? Why don't you just end the show already? Come on.
All right. Hey, it's a Greg and Leisa show.
Right.
Yeah.
We will see you next week, everybody.
Yep. May the peace of God be with you and your family.